Hey guys, it's your girl Aisha, Geek Chic, and we are back with another review to The Walking Dead. This is for episode 22, and very interesting episode, very much a Negan-centric episode, as we saw foreshadowed in the beginning, with all the flashbacks kind of showing us the arc of Negan from him coming in as a very spit-worthy villain to seeing his backstory and how he, started out as, one would say a fairly decent guy and husband, etc., and how that, obviously got twisted over time, and now here he is, he's once again trying to start his life over again, and he's found love again, he's starting a family, and there are people threatening to take that away from him. And it's interesting because, throughout the seasons, if you've watched me and my reactions, that I've had opinions about Negan and whether or not he deserves redemption. And it's a deep question, honestly. Like, at this most, I guess you could say, altruistic core, everyone deserves a chance to turn their lives around and be better. That's what the penal system is supposed to be about in most countries. Someone does something really wrong, they go to prison for it, or in some countries, depending on how bad the bads are, they might lose their life. But in Negan's case, most places in the world, he would have been put in jail and, serve a sentence, a very long sentence, right? And then if he did survive that, the idea is that he's paid his debt to society, and then at that point, he should have hopefully reformed and turned around and tried to live a better life for the remainder of his life. Obviously, we're in a post-apocalyptic world. Negan did stay in jail for a time, but a lot of people would argue that his time in jail served did not come close to the crimes that he committed. I mean, all we saw was what he did to Rick's people, but God knows about all the horrible things he did before that, all the people that he terrorized and hurt and killed and assaulted before all of that. So one could say that, Negan's ledger is deep in the red. And, there's a lot of arguments around whether or not it was right or wrong in this world that's lawless now. Did he do what was necessary to survive? Did he do it because he felt like it was the only way? Like, there's just so many things one could argue here. And in this post-apocalyptic world, like, everyone's had to change and do things that this world would look at and say are wrong, right? Even our heroes like Rick and Michonne and Daryl and Carol and all of them, like, they've all done things now that, as I said, in the old world would have been considered atrocious. But whether or not it's moral or right or wrong kind of comes down to the circumstances and who they are and why they were doing it, right? So we haven't really delved deeply into why Negan did all the things that he did, especially when he was still in his Negan the Savior era. But I do think that, as brought out way back when I was watching the seasons with Negan, I was saying that the reality is that every villain is a hero of his own story. And even when Negan was a savior, he genuinely believed that he was doing the right thing for the people that he was protecting. And whether or not he cared about them was definitely up in the air. But, in his own way, he thought he was doing the right thing. And so with that in mind, it begs the question, is he deserving of not getting another chance? Because if his intent was to help people, but it got twisted and distorted because of the world that they live in, and obviously his own issues and narcissism and being imperfect. Now that he's learned a lot of hard lessons, he went to jail, he almost died. He saw what it looks like to see a community that truly, loves and trusts each other in Rick's people, which is something he hadn't seen before that really. I think it's fair to say that Negan has changed. I don't think he's exactly the same man he was back when we were first introduced to him. But as I said, actions have consequences, and he definitely hurt a lot of people. And we see, like with Ezekiel, he has very real reasons to never forgive Negan. Henry's brother was just a kid, and he died unnecessarily, indirectly because of Negan's men. Like, we all know now that, of course, Negan never hurt children, so he would never have approved of that kill, but his influence, is indirectly responsible for that. So anyway, as I said in the episode, Zeke does not need to forgive Negan. No one has to, actually. Maggie's not required to. No one's required to forgive that man for what he did. But at the same time, you waste a lot of time and energy hating people. And again, let's be real, Negan wouldn't have come back into their space unless, the circumstances hadn't forced him back in. He wasn't trying to get in with Alexandria again. He was trying to build a life elsewhere. So it just happened to be that, they were forced back together by fate. But for Ezekiel, it's understandable why he's like, I don't think you deserve to be a father. And I said it in the episode, and I'll stand by it. Glenn never got to meet his child, so I'm not particularly sad about Negan not getting to meet his child either, even if it is the new Negan, just because, as I said, actions have consequences. And so anyway, I don't think we're going to lose Negan. This episode definitely toyed with the idea. They definitely did the trope of, giving us a lot of flashbacks and Negan time, which in the past in The Walking Dead has often equaled that character dying. But as a, dying the way that he was trying to would absolutely have created a martyr. And I do like that we saw the guy who was in charge of the hard work camp or whatever, that he very much figured out that that's what Negan was trying to do. And he was smart. Like, I'll give him that. He did figure out that they were keeping track of the guards. He did figure out that there were smart people amongst them planning something. And that's clearly why no one's escaped that work camp so far, is because he's clearly a smart guy. But I don't think he anticipated that the guards would start to falter as well. And I don't even know why he would not think, after denying someone a transfer and doing all this stuff, that he wouldn't get his own people against him. But again, his own arrogance, his own narcissism is what ended up getting in his way. And that's one thing I like, that Negan kind of saw that in him. But I think that, again, Negan underestimated him, though, in the fact that he would kill his wife and everybody else too, just to prove his point. So anyway, it was interesting to see that arc. And we'll see, like I said, it does not mean that we're not going to lose Negan yet, but all the same, they definitely are working hard on this redemption arc for him and his character. And as I said, even though I'm not pressed either way. Like, if Negan dies, as I said, he has a lot to atone for, so I'm not that sad about it. But if they do choose to keep him on, I'm not mad about that either. Like, he's not living the way that he used to. Old Negan would never have sacrificed himself for a wife and an unborn child the way that he did, and the things that he did, like to protect Judith and other things. Like, he's changed, is my point. So we had a little bit with the crew that was with Jerry and Lydia and all of them. We see them met up with an old familiar face there, the people that had gone to Oceanside, and they let them know that Oceanside is no longer Oceanside, that's been taken over by the Commonwealth, and that the women, it looks like, have been dispersed and have been put to work. They, I guess, tried to put up a fight, but it didn't go very well, and they were running from them, and so they decided to join up with this group, but they are obviously being pursued by the Commonwealth, so they had to put Alpha's teachings back into practice, and we see that they're walking amongst the dead right now, hiding in a herd, trying to escape them. But again, these people are very much watching this herd, because I think they're trying to see whether or not, these people are in there, because obviously they can't stop looking until they find these two escapees. And if they found the wagon, they probably also saw that other Alexandrians are there too. So we'll see how long it lasts, because if they just keep looking at this herd, at some point they're gonna see that there's some living people in there. But more than that, we saw one of these climbers, as they call them now, grabbed a knife that was dropped. So we'll see what happens if that climber goes after one of the living, or like in the group, or if they're gonna go after one of the Commonwealth people. But again, this knowledge, this golden knowledge that this group has, which is that the walkers are evolving, is huge, and that needs to get back to the group as soon as possible, because even though they haven't come across these yet, as we all know, we don't want them to find out the hard way that some of these walkers are now thinking independently and actually, showing more dexterity than the average walker. And then finally, we had the trial of Eugene, which of course we knew was going to be a farce from the get-go. And we see that at the very least, Yumiko was able to incite the people. Like, the people were already kind of tired, but she made sure to keep bringing up the fact that Pamela is shaky, her word is shaky, the whole administration is shaky, and like, she's trying to get the people upset, because obviously in any kind of democratic society, and I say that in quotes because clearly Pam is not running it truly like a democracy, but anyway, if your people are unhappy, then the whole thing falls apart, right? People will start to come apart at the seams, and they're going to stop following rules. When that happens, of course, everything comes apart. So that was good work on Yumiko's side. And then of course, Eugene giving a really good speech about the importance of how one person is all it takes to fuel a change. I love that speech. It's so true. Obviously this is a fictitious situation, but it's so true of anything, any regime, any situation, any way of life that's happening that's not okay. Sometimes people feel like one person's not enough to make a change, and that's what we saw Mercer struggling with. Like, he was like, I'm one guy, what am I going to do? Like, why should I struggle? Why should I sacrifice my life and know that nothing's going to change? I should protect myself and try to protect my family. But we saw that with with his sister. She's not willing to do that anymore. She's like, I've stood and watched way too much happen, and I'm not going to do that anymore. Eugene giving a speech about how he's lived a good chunk of his life hiding behind other people and letting bad things happen, self-preservation, but how he's not doing that anymore. And obviously it inspired Mercer to know that this man was willing to literally sacrifice his life for his sister, and that he's a good man. And that knowing that, again, Princess left because she said the same thing, like, yeah, I mean, I might be one person, but this is my way of standing up to something that I don't respect or something that I don't want to continue. So he's had a lot of examples now of people doing that, and I really like that ending part where he's like, let's mess some stuff up, like, let's start a riot, like, it's time, because this isn't okay, and the people are sick of it, and the people are tired, and people like Pamela need to be taken out of charge. Because we saw that smirk when she walked out of the courtroom. I'm like, why are you smiling, sis? Like, this was rigged from the get-go. You won nothing. You know what I mean? So women like her are a problem and they need to be taken out. And we see that there's going to be a lot of mess in the Commonwealth now, but it's good. Revolution needs to happen there because, as Mercer said, while the guards and while the army and the military that they have are not on board, there's always going to be a problem. But Mercer has the respect of a lot of people in that community, but also in the military. So I think now that he's willing to join the riot, things are going to get messy in the Commonwealth, but for the better. And I have a sneaking suspicion that Yumiko is going to end up taking over Pamela's spot when she's dethroned. So we'll have to see what happens there. A lot of culmination points are starting to come together. 2 episodes left. We're going to see what happens because we see now that at the end of the episode that Coco and some of the kids were not with Herschel at the house or in Alexandria. So maybe it's wherever that train was going. Remember that Connie was supposed to end up going someplace else. So there is still one more culmination point, which means that unfortunately Pamela still does have an ace up her sleeve, and she clearly does have a few people that are still loyal to her. So we're gonna have to see how it's all gonna wrap up and where we're gonna end up, but I'm excited to find out. And this episode was really interesting to watch. So I hope you guys enjoyed watching this. If you did, please give this video a thumbs up, and we will see you in the next episode.